The biggest challenges facing the first Yoshida cabinet were the establishment of the Constitution of Japan and overcoming the food crisis. I have already explained the Constitution of Japan in another video, so here I will explain how to escape from the food crisis. There were two main reasons why the food crisis occurred in Japan at that time. The first reason is the impact of Japan's defeat in the war, which resulted in the loss of territories such as Taiwan and Chosin. This is because the rice and other food resources that Japan had previously relied on for imports have run out. The second reason was that many Japanese who had been in war zones or former colonies had returned to the mainland, causing a food shortage in the country. To address this situation, the government issued a large amount of banknotes. As a result, inflation progressed at an incredible rate within Japan. Life in Japan became extremely difficult, and people had to rely on the black market for daily necessities. The people lived in fear of starvation, trading their clothes and personal belongings for food on the black market. The first Yoshida cabinet was tasked with overcoming the serious food crisis and rebuilding the economy.
時局は誠に重大を極め、ことに食料問題の速やかなる打開は我が国民再生の鍵であり、一瞬の遷延すら許しません。
The Minister of Finance in the first Yoshida cabinet was Tanzan Ishibashi, who rose to prominence within the Liberal Party after the war. Tanzan Ishibashi was a successful journalist, but after the war he became involved in politics. His opinion was that we should accept a fiscal deficit and speed up reconstruction, and that a free economy is what will promote reconstruction. He chose an expansionary fiscal policy. However, GHQ was opposed to his ideas. GHQ believed that controlling inflation should be the top priority and control of the Japanese economy should continue for the time being. GHQ chose a policy of austerity policy. To GHQ, Tanzan Ishibashi's fiscal policy was a dangerous policy that would accelerate inflation. Because of this, GHQ disliked Tanzan Ishibashi and repeatedly asked Shigeru Yoshida to let Tanzan Ishibashi resign. Yoshida Shigeru was caught between Tanzan Ishibashi and GHQ and began to suffer. I will give a simplified explanation of the problems Japan faced at the time. At that time in Japan, there was a high demand but a low supply, which caused prices to rise. As people return to Japan, demand is bound to increase. To fix this situation, it was necessary to restore production by increasing supply. As production recovers and supply increases, people's demand will be met and prices will gradually stabilize. Based on this idea, GHQ came up with a plan to restore production in Japan. After the war, Japan was short of funds and resources, and it was not easy to increase production. A strategy was needed to effectively utilize limited funds and resources. This is why the priority production system was introduced. The priority production system is a policy that aims to rebuild and expand the entire economy by investing limited funds and resources in specific industries. This is difficult to understand, so let me give you some specifics. At that time, the coal and steel industries were the foundations of all Japanese industry. Without coal, steam engines would not run, and railways and factories would come to a halt. Without steel, we would not be able to make machines or equipment. The government began to invest heavily and prioritized in the coal and steel industries to restore coal and steel production. Steel is produced using oil and coal, which were only imported in small quantities. The steel was used to repair and expand coal mining facilities, restoring coal production. The coal produced is then used again as fuel for steel production. The idea behind the priority production system is a policy of mutually inputting the products of the coal and steel industries, promoting mutual recovery and supporting the recovery of the entire economy. The government tried to promote economic recovery, but the results were not immediate. While waiting for the policies to take effect, workers continued to fight hunger, working desperately to keep food on their hands and to keep them alive. Labor unions played an important role in such a difficult social situation. At that time, there were two major labor unions in Japan. The first is the Japanese Federation of Labor, commonly known as SADAME. The second is the Congress of Industrial Unions of Japan, commonly known as the Sanbetsu. The SADAME of trade unions has approximately 860,000 members. This was primarily associated with the Japan Socialist Party. The number of union members of Sanbetsu-I is approximately 1.56 million. This was primarily linked to the Communist Party. Workers organized through their respective unions and worked together to protect their lives and working conditions. And they raised their voices. Workers' daily lives remain difficult, and the government has refused to improve our conditions. So we are the only ones being forced to make sacrifices. There was widespread dissatisfaction among the workers. In this social climate, the Communist Party had already decided on a policy to overthrow the Yoshida Shigeru cabinet and establish a People's Republican government. The Communist Party led the workers through participation conferences. They expanded the labor movement from demands for wage increases to political struggles, aiming to seize power. On the other hand, the Japan Socialist Party and the SADAME of trade unions took the position that workers and employers should cooperate to aim for greater production efficiency. They adopted a more moderate policy than the Communist Party and the Sanbetsu. However, the labor movement led by the Communist Party gradually spread and reached civil servants, workers in government offices. At the time, civil servant salaries were not keeping up with inflation. Public servant unions affiliated with the Sanbetsu have begun demanding wage increases on par with those in the private sector. In this way, in response to the expansion and intensification of the labor movement, SADAME gradually leaned toward forming an alliance with the Sanbetsu. Unions from various sectors, including teachers, railways, civil servants, electricity, newspapers, communications, and coal mining, joined the movement, demanding wage increases. A large-scale demonstration was held calling for the overthrow of the Yoshida Shigeru cabinet, with approximately 500,000 people gathering around the National Diet building. In response to this situation, the opposition parties jointly submitted a bill for dissolution of the Diet. The opposition parties argue that Parliament has already lost the people's trust and should be dissolved, and public opinion asked once again. In response, Shigeru Yoshida declared, "The government will take the necessary measures." Shigeru Yoshida denounced the striking workers as lawless people and expressed his opposition to the labor movement. However, this response will only further intensify the increasingly radical labor movement. Believing that the situation would worsen, Yoshida Shigeru sought a new solution to calm the labor movement. One of the means they considered to achieve this was to form a coalition with the Japan Socialist Party. Let's take a look at this in order to see whether a coalition with the Japan Socialist Party was sought. First, let's look at the situation in the House of Representatives at that time. The House of Representatives was green in the most recent election. The Liberal Party, which was unable to gain a majority, secured a majority by cooperating with the Japan Progressive Party. However, the Japan Progressive Party did not cooperate with them unconditionally. The Japan Progressive Party needed something in return. In exchange for nominating Yoshida Shigeru as Prime Minister, the Japan Progressive Party requested that several of its ministers of state be included in the cabinet. A cabinet formed by the cooperation of multiple political parties is called a coalition cabinet. The coalition with the Japan Socialist Party was a plan to add the Japan Socialist Party to the coalition between the Liberal Party and the Japan Progressive Party. He believed that if he could bring the Japan Socialist Party, which had strong ties with the SADAME, into the cabinet, he would be able to suppress the momentum of the labor movement. Shigeru Yoshida contacted Suehiro Nishio, Secretary General of the Japan Socialist Party, and advanced coalition negotiations. The Japan Socialist Party did not cooperate unconditionally. The Japan Socialist Party's view was that expansionary fiscal policy are more appropriate now than austerity policy. The Japan Socialist Party's ideas were in conflict with those of Tenzin Ishibashi, who served as Minister of Finance. As a condition for forming a coalition, the Japan Socialist Party demanded the resignation of Tenzin Ishibashi as Minister of Finance and his status as Minister of State. Shigeru Yoshida tried his best to persuade the Liberal Party to make this happen, but failed to convince them. As a result, Yoshida Shigeru's plan to form a coalition with the Japan Socialist Party fell through, and he was unable to respond to the increasingly radical labor movement. The first Yoshida cabinet found itself in even greater difficulty.